objectives of being Quakers is not to be Quakers for an hour on Sunday morning. It's to be Quakerly in our entire life.
John, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us about your new pamphlet today. I wonder if you wouldn't mind starting by just sharing a little bit about who you are and what led you to write this pamphlet, which is Wait and Watch and Spiritual Practice, Rehearsal, and Performance.
Thank you very much. Alex, my name, as you said, is John Ender Gallery. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I attend the Chestnut Hill Friends meeting, which is where I first discovered Quakers about 32 years ago. I started writing spiritual essays around the year 2000 when I was participating in a prayer vigil for peace on Independence Mall. And a selection of those essays became my first Pendle Hill pamphlet. So that encouraged me to keep writing. And I started writing longer essays. About a dozen of those have been published in Friends Journal, including one this last month. And then in the last 3 years, I wrote 3 additional Pendle Hill pamphlets, of which Wait and Watch is the last and most recent one. So I'm grateful for the support that Pendle Hill has given to my writing. And if you're curious, you can see information about all of my writing on my own website, which is johnendergallery.com. So this particular pamphlet came about because I had published 2 essays in Friends Journal. The first was about my thoughts about meeting for worship, and it was published in 2006. I had hoped to follow that up fairly quickly with one about meeting for business, but things get in the way, and that didn't get published until 2022. But I really wanted people to see these 2 essays as companions, to see how the ideas from one carried over to the other. And then I had a third component I wanted to add. So a Pendle Hill pamphlet was simply the perfect way to be able to bring things together and to add this other element that I wanted. To give you an idea as to what the pamphlet's about, I'd like to just read a short paragraph from the introduction. The general purpose of all religions is to inspire their members to live their lives to a higher standard than would be considered normal for a person primarily concerned with worldly success and accomplishments. From this perspective, meeting for worship and meeting for business are opportunities to learn how to live at this higher standard. That is, how to behave as a spiritually led person in all aspects of life. Since these are the 2 experiences Quakerism offers, it is important to view each as an educational experience and ask, what do they teach? What am I learning from each to enable me to live my daily life in a higher standard of being? An answer can be found in considering the 3 stages of developing skills in other disciplines, namely practice, rehearsal, and performance. So the first section of this pamphlet discusses meeting for worship as a place to practice the development of certain skills. And I identify 7 specific skills, which I'll describe in a minute. The second section is about meeting for business and how that presents an opportunity to rehearse the application of these skills to real life decision making, you might say, but in the context of the Quaker decision making process. And then the third section is about daily life, the performance of my daily life, and how these skills carry forward to allow me to presumably be a Quaker all the time. So the 7 skills that I identify, I'm going to try to use some crude visual aids to describe them. First one is be present. Many people refer to this as being grounded, but they mean the same thing. It means that at the start of meeting for worship, you're trying to eliminate distractions and just focus on being right there where you are right now. A second skill I call be patient. I have no idea what's going to happen at meeting for worship. I don't know if someone will speak in the first 10 minutes or not till the last hour, to the end of the hour, or maybe not at all. So I have to be patient and basically wait and watch to see what happens. The third skill I call remembering God. And this comes from Islam. Basically means to be aware that God is present in your life all day and all night, not just at special times when you might be focusing on it. So it reminds me in these meetings that God is present, God is leading us, God is there in the other person just as much as God is in me.
Mhm.
So the next skill I want to learn is to be open to the unexpected. As I said before, I don't know what's going to happen in meeting for worship. I don't often know what's going to happen in meeting for business either. I have to approach these with an open attitude and be expecting that something different, something that I haven't thought of might very well happen. And the corollary to that is if I want to be open, then I have to be non-judgmental. I have to be willing to hear what people say, not think, oh, that message is coming from Joe, and I think Joe's dumb most of the time. I can't judge either people or what people say or what happens. I have to be just open to accepting whatever comes along.
Mm.
The other key skill in meeting for worship is knowing when to speak. There've been lots of things that have been written about this, but there are 2 that have been important to me. One is I am usually stimulated by something that happens right there in the meeting for worship, either something someone else says, or maybe there's a friend I haven't seen in a long time that reminds me of something, but some external circumstance prompts a response in me that leads to the evolution of a message.
Mm.
Second criteria for me is I have to feel that I really do not want to stand up and give it. Does I have to have this feeling in my gut that I'm really being called by God to do something I'm hesitant to do, and I better just get on with it and do it. So the last skill, which relates to that, is having courage. And this idea comes from a quotation that's in the pamphlet from a Native American chief, White Eagle. And I'd like to read it because it sounds like something George Fox himself might have said. Here it is. When you are in doubt, be still and wait. When doubt no longer exists for you, then go forward with courage. So long as mists envelop you, be still. Be still until the sunlight pours through and dispels the mist, as it surely will, then act with courage. And that's what I need when I stand up to give what I think is a inspired message. It's what I need to be able to live my daily life with the integrity of following my spiritual values. So I hope that brief overview will be tantalizing enough to encourage you to read the entire pamphlet.
Indeed. I know that it was a joy for me to read. I just recently finished it. I wonder if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about what you want your readers to take away from this pamphlet after reading it.
Well, I want them to take away three things. The first is I'd like them to take away this concept of practice, rehearsal, and performance, because I think that our objectives of being Quakers is not to be Quakers for an hour on Sunday morning. It's to be Quakerly in our entire life. And I think that this notion of practice, rehearsal, and performance helps to link our spiritual activities with our daily life. The second thing I want them to take away is the importance of meeting for business in creating that linkage. I think a lot of people go to meeting for worship, but don't go to meeting for business because they find it tedious and boring. But it's the process of making decisions that is the important skill to learn. And meeting for business is really an important link in that whole process. And lastly, I hope these 7 ideas about meeting for worship will help people to have a richer experience of meeting for worship for themselves.
That's wonderful. Now I have to go back and reread it with those takeaways in mind.
Well, one of the nice things about the way the pamphlet was done is that the last page before the notes, there's a 1-page summary of each of the 7 points with a very brief explanation. And I've viewed that as something that people could almost tear out of the pamphlet and use as a cheat sheet, you might say.
Perfect. I'll bring it with me to my next meeting for business. Well, John, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure to speak with you and a pleasure to read your pamphlet, and I can't wait for other people to join me in reading it. Thanks so much.
It was a pleasure to be here.